Elevator maintenance folks, what is the weirdest thing you have found at the bottom of the elevator chamber? Keys. Trash. Bugs if the building is exceptionally shitty. Mostly dirt and dust. Found a paint roller that the last guy left there once. It was stuck to the floor. Not a whole lot of weird stuff can make it between the sill and the landing. This question should be my jam, but unfortunately I've never found anything interesting. $2 coin once, a dime bag of some unknown drug, plenty of syringes, or sets of keys. It's mostly just people's junk mail and empty chip bags down there. I once accidentally lost my driver's license down the little gap in the elevator doors, just dropped it and was super unlucky as it slipped through. It turned up in my mail 10 years later. Obviously long expired, but still crazy some maintenance guy found it and bothered retuning it. Got pulled over once, handed the po my license and he dropped it in the crack where the window would have been. We looked at each other for a second, he says good luck and walked away. Edit. It took a few minutes to take a vent off the side and grab it with a wire and some tape. That's when you go to the station, explain what happened and ask if their car mechanic can do it or if they want you to just send them the bill for deconstructing the door. Worked at a hotel. Guest dropped their phone down the shaft. After a few failed retrieval efforts, we called the elevator guys. They went down, got the phone and also found a carton of eggs. Rotten, but not cracked. I don't even understand how that could happen accidentally. Because it was no accident. I work in tech now, but while I was in college I helped an HVAC guy and he once had me put a carton of fresh eggs in the duct of a client's office that had stiffed him before. When I asked him why I was doing this, he said if this motherfuck doesn't pay up, he's going to have a new issue. But then the guy paid 2 days later and I was sent to retrieve the eggs. He called it his 99-cent insurance policy. I grew up in a family of bricklayers. In the 60s and 70s we built a lot of fireplaces. Back then none of neither my father or any of his brothers had licenses. It wasn't uncommon for a client to refuse to pay and say try to collect, you are unlicensed. So the bothers started putting thin panes of glass across the interior of the chimney. If the client paid they would go on the roof and drop a piece of brick down the chimney to break the glass, and render the fireplace functional. After several years of this, a client told the craziest brother that he knew the trick and had broken the glass. Crazy uncle threw a chain around the chimney and hooked it to his truck. Told the client he had 1 hour to pay in cash. Did home repair to help put myself through college. Get a call that there's a non-wastewater leak in an apartment in a second-floor bathroom from a landlord, so me and my coworker go over. The water line on the toilet has a leak, enough has come out that we need to remove some of the ceiling in the living room to replace it. So we cut out a 4x4 area that meets a ceiling joist and we find an egg. One single egg balanced on the ceiling joist. We gingerly removed it and tossed it out. The ceiling had been closed up for at least the last 40 years. It was lath and plaster, that old. That egg still haunts me. I used to live in the basement apartment of a house that the owners lived upstairs. They'd built the basement first, worked on the upstairs, and when the upstairs was complete enough to live in, they moved upstairs and me and my roommates rented the basement. The rent was discounted because we also helped work on the house, so I did stuff like help reside the house, install floor tile, and I also grouted the kitchen, etc. This is when I was a lot younger and that kind of thing seemed like a sweet deal. Anyway, the owners had practiced some of their Reno skills fixing up parts of the basement before they did the work for real upstairs, so there were some definite Yankee bits of the downstairs, but my roommates and I were all 18-19-20 ages, so we took that kind of thing for granted. One morning, one of my roommates was showering and then there was a kind of slow crashing sound and then he bellowed, "Oh my god, what the F," and then started retching. The ceiling above the shower, which the owners had fixed up before we moved in, had given way and fallen down on him in the shower. Bad enough, what with the plaster and sheetrock bits and tufts of insulation, but we also discovered something really important that day, which was this. Any piece of the upstairs floor that had pipe joints or anything like that in it, basically anything that was getting closed up last by the subfloor, instead of sweeping up the construction trash and putting it in the bin outside, they just swept construction trash into the floor and nailed the subfloor down on top of it. Also, the owners had a dog that wasn't very housebroken. He pooped in the house basically all the time. Why pick up dog poop and throw it away when you are already sweeping stuff into the floor? So my other roommate and I burst into the bathroom to see a 6 feet 4 inches naked man standing in a pile of wreckage, shower still gamely streaming over everything, eyes screwed shut in horror, bits of trash, dog poop and plaster stuck all over his body, alternately yelling "I'm going to kill them" and retching. He was afraid to move because of all the nails and screws, and also because he was basically blind without his glasses. Edit, a word. Also, sorry this is so long, but fewer words would not have encapsulated the rage and horror of that moment. My dad has a great story about this. He supervised the mechanics, and one of them called him from a mental hospital and said, "You've got to see this." The maintenance guy was called because the elevator wasn't quite sitting level on the ground floor, it was about half an inch too high and both patients and staff had been tripping on it. But all other floors were no problem. My dad arrived to find the maintenance guy cackling, looking into the bottom of the shaft. There were probably tens of thousands of magazines down there. They had to get a bunch of shovels, a small crew, and a rolling dumpster to clear it out. When it was all done, my dad decided to stay behind and pretend to read a newspaper while he sat in the lobby. After about half an hour, he sees an elderly patient holding a magazine, shuffling slowly toward the elevator. He stops in front of the doors, glances left, glances right, and quickly stoops down, slides the magazine into the gap, and shuffles away as fast as he can with a huge grin on his face. My dad could not help but laugh hysterically. This guy had probably been sliding magazines in there multiple times per day, every day, for decades. I should ask him whether he reported it or let the guy have his fun. Wouldn't surprise me if my dad went with the latter.